In a recent interview of Tucker Carlson being interviewed by Sagar and Jetty of Breaking Points, we see that quite fascinating conversation ended up unfolding. The entirety of the actual interview is quite good. I will have it linked in the description down below so you can go check it out in your own time. Well, they ended up talking about Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, and with it, they ended up addressing the fact that so many people within the America First conservative right turns out to not even be America First. What happens is when Israel comes into the fray, they end up abandoning this ideal of America first in support of Israel first every single time. And we can see that Ben Shapiro and the types akin to him, much like the Christian Zionists, are always the ones that end up swinging into this mindset. They always claim to care so much about America and be America first until Israel is in danger. It's quite a fascinating thing to talk about and with it because it's always these people that talk about the nature of what is it? Identity politics. Well, it turns out people like Ben Shapiro despise identity politics until it comes around the nature of their Jewish identity. Quite a fascinating conversation when you think about the depth and why people had the certain filters that they do because of their upbringings that allow them to have these different biases. They don't realize that they're actually approaching this and speaking out of both sides of their mouths. It's an interesting thing, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and move on and throw it into this video. But before we do, I just have to address anyone that tries to tar me with this nonsensical anti-Semite brush. Well, you have no power here. That word means nothing to me because I don't hate anyone, race, religion, or creed. It doesn't matter to me. So you can't use that here. It has no power, just so you know. Now let's go ahead and throw it into this clip of Tucker Carlson talking to Sagar and Jetty.
This is another thing too. I've always respected them most is, to a certain extent, I rejected the system early on, but you came up in it and you also openly gave them the middle finger, even while growing up next to them, living next to them for years. Yeah. I've watched it with Ukraine and I watch it now with Israel. I watched in particular, there was a lot of consternation around some comments you made, I think by Ben Shapiro and other, where you were like, well, I've never seen this level of care about Americans who are dying of fentanyl, which I think is a traditional nationalist message. And yet I've watched the entire kind of right-wing ecosystem get embroiled in fundamentally what is a third world conflict. Now, we can say support, not support, we can have criticisms, etc. of that. But what explains this literal allegiance to narrative on Ukraine, on Israel? Why is it that so many of these people don't seem to have the same level of care for actual American citizens?
I find it really distressing. And in both of those conflicts, I approached it with a clean conscience because I just don't have strong feelings one way or the other. And I'm not hostile. I've never hated Ukraine. I don't have any feelings about Ukraine. And Russia, same thing. I've never been to either place, and I'm not invested emotionally. So I could just look at it from an American perspective. In the case of Israel and the Arab world, I've spent a fair amount of time in both, and I like both. And I felt terrible for the people who were killed on October 7th. I still do. So I had no weird motive. I was just thinking about it from an American perspective. Is this good for us or is it not? And I was just amazed by the intolerance and the willingness to immediately go to invective and character assassination. And it's I said, first of all, if the people who live in Gaza who are being moved out are so evil and dangerous that they can't live in the region, why would you want them to move into my country? I mean, what are you saying? They can't live there because it's too scary to live next to them, but they can live next to me? So at that point, I felt very hostile about that because it showed such contempt for me and my family and my neighbors and my country. It is my country. That's how I feel about it anyway. It's all of our country. And so I was disgusted by that. And I said so. And I don't know why that's weird. Why wouldn't I be offended by that? And then it was immediately, I'm a hater or a bigot or something like that. None of that registered with me because, first of all, I've been attacked for so long, but attacks that aren't true. If somebody said, wow, you've gained some weight this summer, I'd be like, oh, it would hurt my feelings because it's true. But if someone's like, oh, you're a hater, or you hate, that's not true. So I don't really care. But I did think it showed the level of not just corruption, which I knew, but of emotional instability and craziness. I mean, there are people, and I stopped reading any of it, but there are people on the right who have spent the last 2 months every single day focused on a conflict in a foreign country as our own country becomes dangerously unstable on the brink of financial collapse with tens of millions of people who shouldn't be here in the country. We don't know their identities or the purpose of their being here. Stuff that's could destroy the country for real and make it impossible for my kids to live here. They've said nothing about that, and they're focused with laser intensity on foreign conflicts. And I'm like, at some point, I've got 4 kids. If I'm so caught up in the problems of my neighbor's children and completely ignoring my own children as they get addicted to drugs and kill themselves, I'm not against helping my neighbor's kids, but clearly I don't love my kids. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion, and they don't care about the country at all. And that's kind of their prerogative, but I do, because I have no choice, because I'm from here, my family's been here hundreds of years, I plan to stay here. Like, I'm shocked by how little they care about the country, and including the person you mentioned. And I can't imagine how someone like that could get an audience of people who claim to care about America, because he doesn't, obviously, right?
Right.
From the AF Post, Tucker Carlson rips Ben Shapiro for caring more about Israel than America. And yeah, I do believe he cares more about Israel than America. So many people are going to see this clip and be like, wow, Tucker Carlson said Ben Shapiro doesn't care about America at all. He doesn't have one singular care for the United States. I can't believe Tucker Carlson would say that. Except that's not what he's saying. But here we can see people like Larry O'Connor saying to suggest that Ben Shapiro doesn't love this country or care about this country is maniacally insane. And I do believe he cares about the country. I just don't think he loves it. I do believe he certainly loves Israel, though. And here we see from the quartering that isn't what Tucker Carlson said. He said it's clear Ben Shapiro cares more about Israel than America, yet he's built his entire audience off Americans. I think that's a true statement. And it's most certainly true. Ben Shapiro has a large conservative audience, and with it, I would argue it's a large portion of the conservative Zionist right. And now we go over here to Laura Loomer, and for anyone that's saying, oh, you're criticizing a Jewish person or the state of Israel, that's anti-Semitic. Laura Loomer is someone who supports the state of Israel but is criticizing Ben Shapiro, and she actively hates Ben Shapiro. And why is that? Well, it's because Ben Shapiro went after Donald Trump with a lot of vitriolic rhetoric, and because of that, that made Laura Loomer his forever enemy because she loves Donald Trump and will defend him endlessly no matter what. It doesn't matter how bad his policies are. What do we have from Laura Loomer? I love how so many on the right want to post love letters online about Ben Shapiro and come to his defense over factual things that were said about him by Tucker Carlson, because I don't remember any of you calling out Ben Shapiro when he said really nasty things, like actual nasty things about President Trump. People always ask me, Laura, don't you have anything nice to say about anybody on the right? And my answer is generally always no. See, I really respect that, because she's being blunt and honest about the fact of no, I have no ideal that I can put these people in that is any bit of a standard that I will have one modicum of respect for you, because you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth, and because of that, I have no desire to interact with you. I respect this. I don't agree with Laura on a lot of things, but here's the thing. That doesn't matter, because what we have to do is address where people are right when they are, so we can understand where they're honest. Because if you can actually see where they're honest and when they're not, then you can analyze their bias properly, because they might not even realize that they're being dishonest. They might just be speaking through their filter that they've been conditioned to use when analyzing a specific subject. Now we get back to it. Why would I have anything nice to say about fake conservatives in media and politics? They're awful people who lack principles. This is just another example of the double standard. And while I'm not a conservative, I absolutely love seeing people calling individuals out for these things. But here's another thing we have to address in correlation with this. We cannot allow something like this to turn into what the left does with the purity spiral, because the purity spiral is how the left consistently ostracized the normies, and with it, they ended up just siloing themselves off into echo chambers and huffing the same air, and then talking to all of the same people, and with it, because they were all just talking about more and more radical things with no one to counter them, and then when people would actually try and do so, they would then be eliminated via the purity spiral, and then the circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and with it the ideals get more and more intense and radical, and because of it we can now see the nature of what's going on college campuses and all of the propaganda that these students have succumbed to. We cannot allow the right to do the exact same thing, because everyone is capable of falling to this, and we have to address that. And now we go ahead and jump into one more thing from Ben Shapiro, just to show the fact that he's been wrong about so much. He was wrong about Ukraine, he's wrong about what's going on in Israel, he's wrong about the vax. Ben Shapiro consistently wrong about so much, whether it was lockdowns, Donald Trump's handling of what was going on with the Abraham Accords. There was so much. Nonetheless, we're going to go ahead and just read this tweet from Ben Shapiro and close it off. The data show the vaccines are extraordinarily effective at preventing death from COVID and preventing transmission from COVID. The throat-clearing nonsense about vaccine doubt actively disincentivizes mass numbers of people from getting vaccinated and ending the pandemic. February 22nd, 2021. And well, this was the day where Ben Shapiro said something that was categorically wrong and objectively false, because the data that has come in the meantime has proven just that. Anyone that's unaware, go ahead and go look at the John Hopkins data about what was going on with lockdowns and vaccinations. You will be able to go ahead and find that. Go ahead and look at the Great Barrington Declaration. Go look at Israel's data that they had, because they had access to the jab before anyone, because Benjamin Netanyahu made a deal with Pfizer that they would give the data to Pfizer early if they could use it on the people of Israel. So they basically experimented on the people of Israel like guinea pigs. But Ben Shapiro didn't call that out. No, he won't actually address any of these things because, like I said, too big of a blow to his ego. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great. Tell someone you love them. Peace out.